What if I told you the US military brought back an old warplane they said was too old to use?
Every time the fate of the A-10 is discussed, it becomes a battle of worldviews. On one side are the modernization advocates who speak in terms of budget, range, and speed. On the other are the frontline military who understand the importance of effective air support. It's funny that they are trying to justify the Warthog's write-off, not even by its shortcomings, but by its outdated appearance. But pilots love this plane, and the infantry knows that there's no better friend than the A-10. So, why does the aging attack aircraft evoke such a profound emotional response? And how did this noisy, ungainly craft become a symbol of efficiency even in the midst of the stealth fighter era? In the late 1960s, the United States faced an urgent need for a specialized aircraft to support ground troops. By the time of the Vietnam War, the U.S. Air Force's only close air support aircraft was the propeller-driven Douglas A-1 Skyraider of the 1940s. It was slow, vulnerable to ground fire, and had only modest armament. The result was an impressive loss of about 266 of these devices in combat over the Vietnamese jungle. September of 1966 saw the order from General John P. McConnell, Chief of Staff of the U.S. Air Force, to develop a specialized CAS, close air support aircraft under the New Attack Experimental AX program. And a year later, the request for information was distributed to 21 defense contractors. However, the final requirements were not formulated by U.S. Air Force representatives until the spring of 1970, when the service submitted a more detailed request for proposals which emphasized a maximum speed of 460 miles per hour, a mission radius of 285 miles, an external load of up to 16,000 pounds, a takeoff distance of up to 4,000 feet, and a price per aircraft of no more than $1.4 million, or about $12 million today. The AX was the first U.S. Air Force aircraft designed exclusively for CAS, and the Warthog was also not without reason teased as the first aircraft designed around a gun. And there's some truth in this, because in parallel with the request for the development of the attack aircraft, the command issued a separate request for proposals regarding a rotary automatic 30mm AX cannon with a rate of fire of 4,000 rounds per minute and the highest possible muzzle velocity. After a lengthy selection process, Fairchild Republic was chosen to manufacture the aircraft, with General Electric responsible for the cannon. The entire concept of the A-10 revolved around one idea: close continuous support of ground troops. It was supposed to hover over the battlefield, not fleeing after the first enemy salvo, but striking again and again. The designers of this attack aircraft did their homework at the highest level, simplifying the technical solutions to the utmost. The twin TF-34 GE100A turbine engines, each producing 9 65 pound-feet of thrust, are mounted high on the fuselage away from the ground and potential damage. This placement allows them to even operate while being serviced and rearmed on the ground, greatly reducing return to combat time, and their infrared signature is greatly reduced by the bypass ratio and the exhaust routing over the tail planes. Additionally, engineers protected the engines from the rest of the airframe with firewalls and fire suppression equipment. The A-10's 4 fuel tanks were positioned closer to the center and separated from the fuselage so that enemy shells would have to penetrate the aircraft's skin before they could hit the outer skin of the fuel tanks. Moreover, damaged fuel lines are self-sealing. If the damage received by the aircraft exceeds these self-sealing capabilities, then the check valves will not allow fuel to enter the damaged tank. Most of the Warthog's fuel system components are located inside the fuel tanks, so component failure will not result in fuel loss, and the refueling system is designed to purge after use. Additional protection against debris and fuel leakage in the event of damage is provided by mesh polyurethane foam covering the inside and outside of the fuel tanks. But what if the enemy was able to destroy all 4 fuel tanks? Well, in that case, the A-10 and its 2 self-sealing sumps guarantee a fuel reserve of at least 230 miles, which, although it sounds crazy, has already been proven by A-10 pilots during combat sorties over the past almost 50 years. Although the plane got the nickname Warthog due to the external resemblance of its protruding fangs, the guns, and massive front landing gear with the snout of an African boar, in our opinion, the nickname Terminator would be much more appropriate for it. After all, this machine is practically indestructible. Firstly, it can easily survive direct hits from armor-piercing and high-explosive shells of 23mm caliber or lower. Secondly, the A-10 has dual redundancy of hydraulic flight systems and a mechanical system as a backup in case the hydraulics fail. Thirdly, the manual reverser mode allows the pilot to return to base even if his bird has lost one of the engines, half of the tail, the elevator, or half of the wing. Finally, the Warthog's cockpit and flight control systems are protected by 12,200 pounds of titanium aircraft armor, aka an armor bathtub consisting of 0.5 to 1.5 in thick titanium plates that can withstand 23mm cannon fire and indirect 57mm shell fragmentation. The interior of this bathtub is covered with a multi-layer nylon spall shield, and the front windshield and canopy are resistant to small arms fire. What can we say if about 6 of the empty weight of the A-10 is the weight of the armor? To make it even more difficult for enemies to damage the aircraft, many A-10s have a fake canopy painted dark grey on the underside of the hull just behind the gun. This not only completely confuses enemies about the aircraft's position, but also completely confuses them in which direction the Warthog is maneuvering. The A-10's greatest asset is its cannon, the GAU-8A Avenger. For one of the most powerful aircraft cannons ever created. It's a hydraulic 7-barreled automatic Gatling gun that literally eats enemy armor for breakfast. The Avenger's rate of fire was originally an optional 2,100 rounds per minute on the low setting or 4,200 on the high setting. However, this eventually settled on the single value of 3,900 rounds per minute. At this rate, it took the A-10 about 18 seconds of continuous fire to empty its magazine. But in practice, the gun was still limited to 1 and 2 second bursts to avoid overheating and conserve ammunition. No, there are no technical limitations on the duration of continuous gunfire. The pilot can use up all the ammunition in one burst without damaging the GAU-8. However, this approach greatly reduces the service life of the barrel and the gun itself will require additional checks. The innovation in the GAU-8A ammunition design was the use of aluminum alloy casings instead of traditional steel or brass, due to which the gun added 30 to the ammunition capacity for a given weight. In terms of size, the 30mm Avenger cartridges are comparable to a standard beer bottle, while the gun's own dimensions exceed a Volkswagen Beetle. It's worth remembering that in order to remove this weapon, the maintenance personnel are instructed to install a jack under the tail of the aircraft. Otherwise, it'll simply tip over since the cannon accounts for the lion's share of the Warthog's front weight. Was there a chance that this legend would go without updates? No, sir. In the late 1970s, the A-10s received a pave-penny laser receiver mounted on their pylons under the starboard side of the cockpit. This allowed them to reflect laser designators and engage opponents even more precisely. The 1980s saw the introduction of an inertial navigation system for the Warthog. And in the early 1990s, they received the Low-Altitude Safety and Targeting Enhancement Laced upgrade, which provided computerized weapons guidance equipment, an autopilot, and a terrain warning system, which is especially important for low-flying aircraft like the A-10. The late 90s and early 2000s were not a downtime for our hero today, either. It received the Global Positioning System navigation system and multifunctional displays, and the LACE system was upgraded with the Integrated Flight and Fire Control Computer IFFCC. The Air Force also acknowledged that the Warthog's engines were starting to deteriorate and planned to replace them with new ones. However, such ambitions would have cost the service more than $2 billion in 2001. So, the idea was shelved. Then came a tedious wing replacement process that continued into the 2010s as the Air Force calculated that they were at risk of running out of power by 2011. The new wings installed under the Thick-Skin Urgent Spares Kitting Tusk program significantly increased the Warthog's readiness for new missions, further reduced maintenance costs, and breathed new life into the aging attack aircraft, keeping it relevant until at least 2035. And a little later in the winter of 2016, Boeing announced that the A-10 with the new wings will remain in service without problems until 2040. The upgrade of the A-10A to the A-10C was a huge leap for our hog. Between 2005 and 2011, the entire fleet of 356 A-10s and A-10s received all-weather capability, an improved fire control system, electronic countermeasures, ECM, smart bomb guidance, a modern communication suite led by Link 16 and SATCOM, and an improved cockpit that includes 2 multifunction displays, and a hands-on throttle and stick HODAS configuration that allows placing buttons and switches on the throttle lever and flight control stick. The update called Suite 10 included multiple target list improvements, allowing the pilot to engage multiple targets with 3 different types of weapons in a single pass. Furthermore, the aircraft received full integration of the AGR-20 Advanced Precision Kill Weapon System, APKWS laser guidance systems, which provides the ability to target at the maximum kinetic range of the rocket with aiming solutions designed within rocket tolerances. By the start of fiscal year 2024, the U.S. Air Force had 218 A-10s in service, 39 of which had flown to the boneyard in the same year. Unfortunately, military high command believes that these legendary attack aircraft have increasingly limited survivability, especially in any future high-level operations such as a conflict in the Pacific against China. However, this option on the part of Air Force representatives does not prevent Congress from actively preventing regular attempts to get rid of the Warthog fleet. Moreover, they are still carrying out combat missions. For example, Warthogs were among the aircraft sent to the Middle East in October 2024 amid fears of further escalation of the conflict between Israel and Iran, as well as other potential crises in the region. Since then, the veteran attack aircraft have been used extensively in recent weeks to strike across Syria amid renewed uncertainty in the country following the overthrow of dictator Bashar al-Assad. Speculation then followed that the A-10s could migrate to foreign air forces such as Jordan or Ukraine after the U.S. Air Force finally retired the aircraft. But you know what? Warthog's not just a plane. It's a philosophy, an engineering solution that puts the fulfillment of tasks and the lives of infantry above any aesthetics. Power enclosed in a solid metal shell. A rare example when technology does not become obsolete because its value is not in the technology but in the idea. And as long as there's a need to support soldiers on the battlefield, you will not get rid of the A-10. It's a hero of the invisible front who rarely appears on TV, does not shine in pompous air shows, but rather does what it knows it can do better than anyone else. And it does so properly, consistently, and with extreme effectiveness. The ultimate weapon, the legendary A-10 Warthog, is ready to take on modern ground threats head-on with advanced upgrades that make it a fierce contender even alongside modern jets like the F-35. Its remarkable firepower and durability have earned it the nickname Tank Killer. Designed to dominate the battlefield, it built on lessons from the Korean War and improved on the success of the Douglas A-1 Skyraider, making it more formidable than ever. So what new upgrades make the Warthog stronger, and will it continue to stay relevant in the future? Join us as we reveal how the newly upgraded 2025 A-10 Warthog shocked the world in the 1960s when the world was faced with the threat of a nuclear war. Pentagon leaders realized that attaining victory wouldn't only be dependent on the availability of nuclear weapons but also on the ability to support ground troops effectively. However, after the Second World War, the development of attack planes slowed down, leaving the US vulnerable during the Vietnam War. The primary attack aircraft then was the Douglas A-1 Skyraider from the Korean War. Unfortunately, it didn't have enough firepower for the thick jungles of Vietnam and was quite vulnerable to ground fire. Recognizing the challenge that they were faced with, the need to strength and air support became a major priority for the U.S. Air Force. They needed a plane that could handle Soviet tanks and protect infantry by breaking through enemy defenses. In September 1996, General John P. McConnell, Chief of Staff of the U.S. Air Force, ordered the creation of a specialized close air support aircraft, and this led to the creation of the AX program, or Attack Experimental, during the hunt for the perfect aviation company to bestow this incredibly important task upon. 6 companies submitted designs. However, the United States Air Force preferred the Northrop's YA-9A and Fairchild Republic's YA-10A the best. After a process of intense testing, they chose the YA-10A. The United States Air Force later updated its requirements and requested a more detailed proposal for the new aircraft. They considered the possible threat from Soviet armored forces and the need to operate in all weather conditions. The latest specifications included a 30mm rotary cannon, a top speed of 460 miles per hour, a takeoff distance of 4,000 feet, the ability to carry up to 16,000 pounds of weapons, a flight range of 285 mil, and a price of around $1.4 million. This would be the first U.S. Air Force plane designed specifically for close air support to boost its effectiveness. The Air Force also requested a cannon with a minimum firing rate of 4,000 rounds per minute. This led to the creation of the G8 cannon, which can penetrate armored vehicles from over 1,300 yards away, firing 65 rounds per second with 80 accuracy. The project included 4 types of ammunition: practice rounds, semi-armor-piercing explosives, armor-piercing incendiaries, and high-explosive incendiaries. The A-10 is also equipped with a powerful gun known as the Avenger. It is one of the strongest Aircraft weapons ever built, making the A-10 a fast and deadly force that is capable of destroying enemy tanks with ease. The A-10 was also tested with other weapons like the AGM-65 Maverick missile and AGR-20E precision system, adding to its effectiveness against armored targets. This aircraft is renowned for its great firepower, its 30mm cannon, titanium armor plates, and its ability to support ground forces in close combat, making it a valuable asset in larger, more intense battles as global threats change. It makes sense for the Air Force to keep the A-10 in service. It's effective against targets like fuel convoys, and it can carry a wide range of bombs including laser-guided and precise missiles. It also plays a key role in many combat situations such as counterinsurgency and close support for ground troops. It's no surprise that this tough aircraft has been upgraded many times to stay relevant since it was introduced in 1976. The A-10 has had a long career, and it's obvious that it won't be retired until at least 2040. No other aircraft in the US military can match its ability to provide close air support to ground troops. Looking at how the A-10 turned out, it's surprising that such a big and heavy plane can be so agile and effective. Its main design goals are to be tough and easy to maintain. The Warthog was built to operate from rough airstrips and deal with engine damage from debris. This explains why its two engines, the General Electric TF-34G100, are placed high and behind the wings in front of the tail. These engines have a high bypass ratio, which means they produce less heat that could be detected by heat-seeking missiles. Their placement also helps keep them running while the plane is being serviced or loaded with new equipment. Despite the A-10's powerful features, Congress wanted to see if it should continue spending $4.2 billion on the aircraft or replace it with the F-35 Lightning II. To make this decision, the Air Force was asked to upgrade the A-10 and prove if the F-35 could really take its place. To come to a conclusion, the Air Force responded by giving the A-108 major upgrades. Upgrading A-10CS, which started in 2005, was a big improvement for the Warthog. It added precision weapons, some digital screens in the cockpit, and a laser pointer. Suite 10, which will be ready in spring 2021, is the next step in making the A-10 more modern. One of the first improvements was the V-12 lightweight aerial recovery system, which boosted communication between A-10 pilots and ground teams, including pararescue teams and pilots whose planes had been shot down. This system allowed the A-10 to provide even close air support and help with combat search and rescue missions to improve its chances of surviving in modern combat. The aircraft was also equipped with longer-range weapons, since it isn't that fast enough to avoid enemy fire when spotted in hostile airspace. It used to be risky for the plane to get too close before firing, but with its new weapons, the A-10 could engage targets from farther away, showing off its agility in the air. They also use updated strategies to avoid threats and also be able to attack some targets from a distance with precise weapons. After dealing with these threats, they can then move on to their usual missions without a hitch. With night vision goggles, the A-10 can still dominate the battlefield at night and at medium or low altitudes. It can also target ships using the R-12 precision weapon system, which loads rockets 4 times faster than before, making it an even more deadly force. Thanks to the 8th upgrade, Major Kading emphasized that being able to stay safe in battle is not just about having the best equipment in software, it is also about using the most effective in lethal strategies. He also stated that what makes their organization unique is that they focus on all of these critical aspects. Suite 9, which was introduced in 2019, made it possible for JTACs to share their position digitally with the A-10's onboard computer. This helps prevent accidentally targeting friendly forces. It also allowed it to attack multiple targets at once with precision-guided weapons. Now the pilot can drop 6 weapons with just one button press, which used to require a lot of work. This aircraft can now use different types of bombs like the GBU-38 or GBU-31J dams, and the aircraft will tell the pilot if they can hit their targets on one pass. Also, this Suite 9 also included improvements to the pilot's helmet called Hobbit or Hybrid Optical-Based Inertial Tracker. This new helmet tracks the pilot's head movements more accurately using special dots on the canopy. Its capabilities only got better, and the upgrades made it even scarier. The upgraded A-10C carries up to 16,000 pounds of mixed ammunition on 8 underwing and 3 ventral pylons. These include 500 pounds Mark 82 bombs, 2,000 pounds Mark 84 bombs, GBU-39 small diameter bombs, laser and GPS-guided bombs, precision joint direct attack munition, incendiary cluster bombs, combined effect munitions, and mines. Let's not forget the rockets such as the AGM-65 Maverick, unguided and laser-guided 2.75 in missiles, and the AIM-9 Sidewinder. In addition to all this, the A-10 carries infrared countermeasure flares Electronic countermeasure chaff jammer pods and illumination flares. As part of the Site 9 upgrade, the A-10 was equipped with a situational awareness pad that allowed Joint Terminal Attack Controllers to send their positions digitally. This improved the A-10's ability to know where allies and other things were on the battlefield. Before, pilots had to visually search for friendly forces, which could be hard when dust and debris made them difficult to see with. This new upgrade, the A-10 had a clearer view, reducing the chances of mistakes and making it easier to avoid accidentally targeting friendly forces during the chaos of battle.